You need to get me a gavel.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special meeting for Whitewater Township and Miami Township Board of Trustees. At this time, if I could ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Fiscal Officer Jim Brett, will you do a roll call for me, please?
Oh, Mr. Pope.
Here.
Mr. Shively.
Here.
And Mr. King.
Here. Will you go ahead and proceed and do a roll call, whoever needs to do a roll call for Miami Township, please?
Mr. Volrath? Here. Mr. Blanton?
Here.
Mr. Robinson?
Here.
If I could ask everybody to please turn your cell phone. I will go ahead and move towards opening remarks from President Dan Blanton from Miami Township.
Thank you, Don. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this evening. I'm Dan Blanton. I'm the president of Miami Township Board of Trustees. Also here with me, Robinson and Cindy Ozier, our physical officer. I would like to thank of the styrene vapor release. The fire department has a long-standing relationship of working with Whitewater Township. We're proud of our assistance to work together during this incident. There are so many agencies that were involved in assisting in this event, and so many elected officials who's reached out to offer their assistance to our town. I try to name everyone because I don't want to leave anyone out, but our goes out to all of them. I would also want to thank the Whitewater Township Board of Trustees for collaborating with us on the shelters that were open during the event in both Miami and Whitewater Townships, and for hosting this joint. To the best of my knowledge, this is the first time our two boards have held a joint meeting. This is a great example of governments working together to provide the best services and information for our residents.
Burke Holtz is here, but he's in the audience, so Chuck's not going to have any opening comments. Thanks, Chuck, for coming. He is here. The opening comments for the Whitewater Township, just real quick, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping so everybody knows what's going on. Our bathrooms are down the hall where you came in. Men's and women's will be on your left-hand side. If you need to use the bathroom, we do have water up here on the side over here. Feel free if you need some water. We no longer have vending machines here, so we put some water out for everybody. Also, be mindful, we do have an emergency exits. Look around. The exits all up through here and also out through the front where you came in. So just mind. So let's keep order so we can get our questions and answers out of the way. We worked pretty hard trying to put this panel together. This was not designed by anybody. Whitewater Township and Green Township, we kind of put this together to have these folks here to answer what we can answer and the questions that you have. So just be mindful of that, and let's get to questions. If you have a question, at time limit that Fiscal Officer Jim Brett will keep us on. At time limit that Fiscal Officer Jim Brett will keep us on. Obviously, it'll be our call how quick we go, because I don't know how many questions we're going to have. What else? Anything else? For myself, I'm just going to what happened to the wait. I'm one of them. Just so you know. With with that,
Next on our agenda was the,
yep,
our
go ahead.
guest, if you, do you want me to introduce them? All right, so with us this evening is Dr. Attendant from the table. So,
Scott Shores, I'm the fire chief for Whitewater Township Fire Department. John Pepper, Central Railroad, Indiana.
Brian Stussy, Central Railroad, Indiana.
Cindy Oster, Fiscal Officer of Miami Township.
Mike Robinson, trustee, Miami Township.
Dan Blanton, trustee, Miami Township.
Being trustee, Whitewater Township.
Guy Shively, Whitewater.
Willie Pope, trustee, Whitewater Township.
the fiscal officer for Whitewater Township and Township Administrator for Miami Township.
Greg Gusterman, Health Commissioner, Hamilton County Public Health.
Nick Crossley, Emergency Management Director for Hamilton County.
Emergency Planning Committee.
Justin Habig, Administrator, Village of Cleves.
Greg has a presentation next. Do you want to announce
Yeah.
that?
You want to go ahead and do that?
Yeah. So next on our agenda is Kesterman, the health. He has a presentation he'd like to share with us.
Well, good evening, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity. As mentioned, my Commissioner for Hamilton County Public Health, Cincinnati, Norwood, and Springdale. So roughly about 500,000 people here in our jurisdiction. We provide a variety of public health services. Most folks probably are familiar from COVID. We did the contact tracing, but we do much more than that. We do restaurant inspections, public swimming pool inspections, nuisance complaint inspections, sewage treatment systems. We look at those. We also run the We Thrive program. We're in the communities trying to make sure that the communities are healthier. So just a little bit of background about our organization. Sampling that happened and try and make some sense of it. Try and explain it in a way that makes more sense to me. And so if you're one of those folks that had to evacuate, I understand you're frustrated. If I had to evacuate, I would do evacuation order and that initial that came through from. And so initially we heard that there was that half-mile radius of evacuation as well as a 2-mile circle where you were essentially shelter and stay in place. There were two reasons. First is we knew that there was gas off pluming from the rail car, and so we were certainly concerned about environmental contamination and folks being exposed. But probably more importantly, when styrene gas off gases from a rail car, it heats up and it causes a chain reaction. In addition to the rail car that had styrene and was off-gassing, there were multiple rail cars that had styrene. So the risk was fairly large for an explosion. At one point in time, the temperatures got fairly hot, and I would have to about the exact temperatures of what we would expect to see these rail cars. That is kind of why things started. Now let me dive in a little bit about some of the sense of them. So what I want to say is going to be a surprise. 20 years ago when I started, there's no local standard. So when a public health department looks, or when an agency looks and is trying to make sense of what happened and how to allow folks to go back, we look at two organizations predominantly in the United States, and they are most commonly known. OSHA is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. NIOSH is the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. And so this slide has tons of words, and for those of you in the back, I'm going to try and make sense of some of the words and simplify it. So people who work in a business, We know that if you work in a manufacturing setting, there are chemicals. NIOSH and OSHA come in and determine what a safe exposure, so on the amount of substance in an air that a worker can be exposed to. They are based on an 8-hour period. So over that 8-hour period, OSHA looks inside of a workplace if the limit exceeds that threshold on average. So on the screen, I circled what styrene gas threshold is allowed to be. It is allowed to be in a workplace for workers working with it, knowingly working with it, 100 parts per million. That's an important term, and we're going to stick with that throughout the slides. I'm going to talk about parts per million and parts per billion and try and make some sense of that for us as well. The other item I already mentioned there, the yellow highlighting, which deals with the 8 hours, that's important because that's a typical workday. Not perfect, but it does help us put some sense to what's happening with styrene. The other really important number here for public health is the IDLH. Immediately dangerous to life and health. So this is a standard of 700 parts per million, and that as I start to talk about some of the sampling results. So in the case of what is a, and I'm going to use this Olympic-sized swimming pool, and I'm going to show you what happens with liquid in the pool, 1 part per million. So in this scenario, once again, in the red box, I'm putting those limits that I told you about styrene gas just for comparison. In this whole exposure limit for styrene is 100 parts per million. So to have 1 part per million contamination in this Olympic-sized swimming pool, you would have to add 1.25 liters, or about half of a 2 liter, into that pool, swimming pool, to equal 1 part per billion. And the answer is a half a teaspoon. So a half a teaspoon, if you dumped it in the pool, stirred it up, over time, it would even out, and it would be about 1 part per billion. So, and just meant to put things into perspective on. You know, sitting at home, and I was working on this popped in about an hour ago into the presentation. I just added it because I also realized that styrene gas and is scary, and it's not pleasant. But styrene gas is used in all products that we all come into exposure with every single day. From the plastics in this microphone to the plastics in the floor below us, they off-gas small amounts of styrene. The better your house is, the better the windows, the better the door, the higher small amounts of styrene occurring. Here are other examples. I tried to cite them when I could. I did some rough calculations. They're not meant to be exact sciences, but you can guess that I'm fairly close to the amount of styrene gas in each of these scenarios. So the first scenario I got from the National Institute of Health, which is a part of the Centers for Disease Control. Average outdoor suburban air is about 0.62 parts per billion, meaning if you're walking in Cincinnati in the suburbs, you should expect to have some level of exposure around 0.6 parts per billion. If you're sitting in a room 10 by 10, so 1,000 square foot room, and you smoke 1 cigarette, varies by brand, varies by all kinds of scenarios, how far you burn the cigarette down, but generally speaking, somebody sitting in that room with you not smoking the cigarette would be exposed to about 1 part per billion of styrene gas in that cigarette. Copy machine in a 10 by 10 room, 1,000 square feet, printing 100 pages, just only pick that number for tonight's calculation. You should expect copy type, depending on how much color ink, you know, there's all variables, but generally you should expect to be exposed in that room to about 7 parts per billion of styrene gas. If you have windows in the room, there's no, those types of things help mitigate how much styrene gas builds up, but it is present. And actually I was shocked to find out, I had no but beer and wine also have styrene present in it. Wheat beer on the Centers for Disease Control website showed about 30 parts per billion of styrene in wheat beer. Wine has about 7 parts per billion of styrene gas. So thank you. To set the stage a little bit about the background of styrene gas, now I'm going to have a couple slides and talk about the sampling. So this, sitting next to me, as you heard, is the director of the Emergency Management Agency, Nick Crosley. Nick did a fantastic job of putting every piece of information I downloaded the slides and I put it together from the data there. Although I look at the data and it is a little confusing. And so now is to not change the data, just to try and make it a little bit more pretty. So this map is also available on their website. I did add these blue boxes. These are the sampling events that I am going to, on the next slide, put data with. But there were 5 sampling events that had data present on their website. On the next slide, I'm only going to show you things that had for something and find it's not that the equipment that we're using is searching for it. So routinely in a lab, we know what the legal limit in a workplace is for styrene. We talked about that a bit ago, about 100 parts per billion in a workplace over an 8-hour period. So there's no need for a laboratory to look for styrene gas in the trillionths, right? They're kind of basing it on what. As I flip to the next slide, you'll see, one more thing I wanted to once again point out, just to put this into perspective. 100 parts per million mentioned, and I forget that because now that I'm the 5 sampling events on September 24th and September 25th, the highest reading styrene gas that we saw anywhere was 280 parts per billion. So a whole magnitude less than the legal permissible limits. So I think that is really important to keep into perspective. Now that said, if my house was right next to that, I'm frustrated. Once again, I got evacuated, I got exposed to a higher level of gas than I normally am, and I'm frustrated. But this is what we were finding in the field as we were doing our work. And probably the last data slide that I have here, and then I have just one additional slide to share, but the most important slide for me, this slide is also found on EMA, or the data is found on EMA's website. This is a continuous air monitoring sample that happened on September 25th. So if you think back through the timeline, the rail car is kind of under control. They're going to start pulling it out later in the day. But they started this morning at 6:09 a.m. a continuous air sample where they're taking continuous readings from these 3 sites that you can see on the slide behind me for 8 hours. And the best news is, unfortunately, I thought you could see it, but you can't. Unfortunately, the slide isn't super bright, but there were no detects in any of the 3 continuous samples on September 25th. So after the car was shut, after got pulled away, kind of exactly what we would have expected styrene gas to do, it evaporates and leaves the environment. My team brought several questions back to me. I don't know if any of you were at any of the prior briefings, but we did, from my office, we had Dr. Stephen Fagans, who's our medical director for public health, came and spoke. He's a fantastic physician and has been such a wealth of knowledge to myself. I know he talked a little bit about styrene gas, how quickly it evaporates, it goes away. That is actually really good news. It's really bad news for the manufacturing who have to figure out how to keep it stable so they can work with it. But when it does get released into the environment, it quickly dissipates and it quickly goes away. It is not water soluble. It does not like to join to water and go into the ground. So we saw lots of firefighters spraying water on the rail car. It rained on September 24th, which might, to some of us, think, oh my gosh, rain is going to cause it to go into the ground. But the good news is the rain and the fire that the fire departments were putting on the car was intended to cool the temperature of the car, allowing them to do the work necessary to get the car out and to get you back in your homes. The only other thing I want to, let's see, I have one more slide and I want to make sure to mention 1 or 2 other items. So you've heard us say that risk of contamination at home is extremely low. We did put out some things that you can do out of an abundance of caution. So truly, because styrene gas evaporates so quickly, there's not risk at your home. Although sometimes when you get forced to move out of your home and you're coming home and you're bringing your kids home or your family back home, you feel like you want to do something. And I think these items are not bad to do just in general. You haven't been at home for a few days, it's okay to open the house and let it air out. If you want to do something and you left some apples out on the counter or some dog food out on the floor, you could eat them. The dog could eat the dog food. It's safe. But out of an abundance of caution, me personally, I probably would toss those items. I'm not emptying out my refrigerator. I am not emptying out my pantry. I'm not dumping out the cereal that's in a box open in the pantry. I'm just taking some level of caution to give myself some personal sense of calmness. Similarly, I don't think if you've been away from the home for a few days, it's a bad idea just to wash all of those flat surfaces. There's probably a buildup of dust since people haven't been there. But also it provides that sense of cleaning and sanitation that's necessary. I actually don't believe that there's any residue built up on your counters. It off-gassed. It went away quickly. As you saw from the numbers that I shared, most of those numbers are below the occupational allowable limits that an employer is allowed to put a worker in. They're very low in comparison. Once again, not trying to diminish how frustrated I would be if I was sitting in your chair. Just, I think it's important to understand that. And then lastly, laundering clothes. Me personally, I'm probably at 9 o'clock at night when I got home after cleaning counters and tossing some, probably not washing bedding or doing much with laundering clothes, but it is a you could take to provide some additional comfort to yourself. Numbers have been published in the past. If you have concerns about financial impact, we would recommend you call the Central Railroad of Indiana. If you have, my office does private well sampling at no charge. We'd be happy to do some well sampling if you have a private well, although all of our samples from wells have turned up 0. At this point, the public water supply, such as Cleves Water, is all safe. There's no threat. One item I saw in the questions that I might as well go ahead and just ask, and then I'll turn it back if that's okay. The, is that okay for me to keep talking? Sorry. I've exceeded my 3 limits. So, I've seen several questions about the businesses. So luckily, businesses that we regulate are restaurants and grocery stores. My team was quick to respond to Kroger's on the 24th. We talked to them. We talked to their risk management. Kroger's is a large corporation. They were very proactive to allow employees to leave styrene gas found within the side of the store, although once again below the legal allowable limit to allow workers to stay in the store. But they did send folks home, and then they actually all cleaned out the lines on the spray nozzles, produce section. They did all kinds of precautionary tales. Similarly, there's about 8 restaurants in that half-mile radius that my staff went to, including Skyline and I think and a handful of other restaurants. We went out, we talked to them, same kind of recommendations about general cleaning, tossing food that was out. Restaurants are pretty good. They know they're not allowed to leave food sitting out. I'm not saying they don't ever, but they're in pretty good shape when we show up. But those are the things that our office did, and I will stop there and turn it back over to you.
All right.
Okay, hold on a second, let me get my glasses on so I can see what we got here. So we're going to move on the agenda. Again, we're going to jump into the open discussion for the audience. Just keep in mind, we'll have you come up to the podium here. I'll call what has been answered. Just let us know, and then we can kind of move on to the next one. Just remember, let's keep, when you ask your question, somebody up here on the panel will answer your question, and let's just keep order so we can kind of move this along. We have up, it's a Whitewater Township resident, Alicia Johnson. Do you need this? Yeah.
Hi, thanks for coming. And first I wanted to thank you guys for all the hard work you did and the great job you did. So my question goes back to the health, I guess you said commissioner?
Yep.
Okay, so first I wanted to say it did not rain on the 24th. Did not rain until the 26th. But, okay, so let me take a breath. So, air sample results. They're from 9 p.m. on the 24th. We were exposed starting at 12:46 p.m. on the 24th. So do you know what we were actually exposed to? Do you have those results, or are they still stuck in a canister like I was told?
I have no data.
So, 30 minutes ago, there is a team called the Greater Cincinnati Hazmat Team, and so I just got a paper copy of their results.
Okay.
And their run report, so I'm going to go back to the office and scan it. We'll put it on our website by tomorrow. As far as I can interpret, and we've talked about this, you know, I struggle with scientific stuff. I'm a social worker by trade. Their reading at Kroger that afternoon showed 80 parts per billion. But I will put it on our website, and you'll be able to see their actual report, and then this document as
So
well.
at the time, it was actually less than the worst time that you show up there on that slide?
According to their inside, over by Kroger.
And do, okay. So we don't know actually over Hooven. When the Whitewater Township Fire Department spoke and said that there was a plume over top of Hooven, over Kroger. Train being right next to the river, that's untrue. You can look at any camera footage of it. The is actually back this way. Far back this way, actually. So that map is inaccurate. You can clearly look at the picture that he put up of the leak, or the, I'm sorry, not the leak, the vent that was happening.
See the mouse? That's where we believe, that's the.
No, I don't see it.
Oh, no, sorry. See the little flag right in the middle of the screen, right to the left of the word Skyline Chili?
Yes.
That is the epicenter point.
So like where the little circle is, right, the little flag? Yeah, it wasn't there.
Just so that we're all on the same
You
page.
can see, look,
This is the half-mile radius, the red circle, and this is.
okay, so it was not right there. And you can clearly look at the pictures that were taken of the actual train car, and you can see Spooky Bend, well, I'm sorry, we call it Spooky Bend,
Sorry,
Hooven Avenue.
We can let Ohio, the US EPA know to move that marker. So we got this map. This is from their contractor who.
Well,
who
it's
produced the
definitely
report.
incorrect. I mean, if you can
Sure.
watch the video and see that that's incorrect. So my question is, do we have any readings from over where it actually happened?
They have readings from the Kroger parking lot, as I
So that's the
understand it.
only readings that we took? We didn't take any readings up in Hooven?
So I was not in charge of that. I'm just speaking for what
I
TC
understand
Hazmat
that, and
told
I
me.
don't mean to sound upset at you. It's
Yeah.
just a very upsetting event that happened. I mean, it was
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
traumatic for
yeah.
all of us. So my question is Hooven was evacuated. There was, obviously, I believe there had to be some type of air sampling that was being done in Hooven to say we couldn't go back home yet. The health
No,
department was receiving some type of data.
No, I'm sorry.
That's what was
So-
reported.
So we evacuated the half-mile radius out of an abundance of caution in case there was an explosion. Originally, we started with a shelter in place, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, you were there. So we were asked to broadcast, which is part of what we do, a 2-mile shelter in place, and then when they were able to get in and start doing an assessment of the car, per the emergency response guide, which is the guide that all it said, about an explosion, evacuate within a half-mile of the site. So that's primarily why the
okay.
half-mile.
I'm not sure who
and
said that
Chief,
to who, but.
Please.
So, my question is just about the air sampling. Was there air sampling done in Hooven?
This is all the air sampling we have.
Okay, thank you.
Nick, I have.
Oh, okay.
I do have the air sampling from Greater Cincinnati Hazmat.
from Hooven, not from
They set up 4 meters. I do not know the specific locations of their meters, but there were meters up in Hooven, yes.
From 1 to 7. From 1 to 7 p.m.
The earliest, the first meter reading is at 4 o'clock. And you have to understand, it takes time for the hazmat team to get there to deploy their equipment. So the first meter reading I have is at 4 o'clock. And it is, the highest level that we have here is 76 parts per. And that is at 4:06 on September 24th.
And Chief, at any time, was a valve changed, or is there any reason to believe that the valve was opened more, or that it began to off-gas at a higher rate later in the day, or should we have expected similar off-gassing throughout?
Brian, do you have that? So the PRD did shut down where the pressure of the car did fall below the level to where the PRD would close, and I believe that was around 5:30 p.m. that evening where the valve did close. But then, if I remember correctly, it did reopen a little bit later, correct? Or did it stay closed?
I don't know that it's.
Okay.
No, I was told it was reset at 17:13.
Reset at 5:30.
Okay. All All right, thank you. Was that it, Chief?
Did I answer your question?
Okay.
You didn't have anything.
Okay.
Yes. We did not have any meters deployed until 4 o'clock when they had that.
Yeah, it would take time. I mean,
So when we
one,
walk outside into it, we have no reading for what we actually breathe in.
There's
Well,
no
it's
data, there is
2:13, but-
no data. There's no data to support any readings at 1 o'clock.
Or at 2:13 when we were evacuated.
Correct.
Thank you.
What about beside the school?
okay, hold on. Okay, thank you, Alicia. Next question will be from another Whitewater resident, Gina Jackson. I see you wrote a couple on there, okay.
One of my questions is, how often are the train cars and with chemicals inspected that are sitting on those tracks?
Can you just read them all at once and see if they can just, hopefully they all tie together?
Yeah.
So we're
and,
not tying up others to come
My other
up.
question is, how long was the chemical in that specific car? Like, when was it loaded? What's the expiration on the inhibitor in that car?
What was the last one?
What's the expiration on the inhibitor? Is there a shelf life on that inhibitor that was added?
All right, let me start with the first one. I think you asked about inspections on a rail car.
With the chemicals in them, yeah.
We inspect rail cars, period, whether they're loaded or empty. Our crews inspect them when they move them. Every time they move them, they do an inspection, a mechanical inspection as well as for safety appliances.
So it's not like a daily thing?
If it's not moving, no. Correct.
Okay.
You're correct.
Okay.
Your second question was,
How long was the chemical in that specific car?
that would be a better question for EOS. I don't know.
Okay. And do you know what inhibitor was in?
I do not. Again, that's an EOS question.
Okay.
So real quick before you leave, because you still have some minutes, just so everybody knows, let me ask the question first. Do we have anybody in this building from Ineos?
My
So,
understanding was they were out of here,
okay, yeah.
from an inside source.
So, just so everybody knows, Ineos was invited to this meeting. I emailed Ineos, and they responded, and they did not show. There's your answer. I did. Okay? Yeah, thank
I
you.
do know that the car went from Texas City, Texas, I
Yeah.
believe, to
Yeah.
Addiston. I mean, it's their
Yeah.
car, but
So we needed Ineos here, and they're not here. If they come in, just please send them up my way. Okay,
I
thank
will.
you. Thank you, Tina. Absolutely. You can, no, you can't, I don't want that back. You can put it on the bottom.
Actually, I would like to have them back so I can do my minutes.
Okay. So, okay, let's get back on our next question is from the Village of Cleves resident, a George Willoughby. George, you need this, or do you know?
I know what it's.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wondering, when this incident happened, I was sitting on my porch, and I didn't know that the styrene was leaking, and I attempted to get up and go in the house, and when I did, I passed out, immediately passed out. And I was scared that there was, something wrong with me, so I didn't the rest of the day, but the next day I went and checked out, and they checked all of my medical records and everything, and they said that maybe I'd inhaled something, or maybe I'd ingested something to cause this to black out, and I didn't know about the leak until probably several hours later, and they said that it's possible that it could have caused me to pass out. Well, I was just wondering, since I went and had EKG and chest x-rays and blood work and everything to find out what had wrong, because I thought I'd had a stroke, but I didn't. It was as a result of this, I believe, and I believe I'd inhaled it, and it made me almost pass out.
Okay.
And I was wondering who would cover any, you know, the medical bills concerning this, because I don't believe it was my fault.
Does anybody want to respond to that? Okay, thank you.
I'm going to give a phone number out that we gave out previously.
Okay.
1-800-757-7387. And if you have any claims like that, I'd ask that you call this number. Have as much documentation as you possibly can prepared to provide, which would make it easier.
Okay, well, I did call.
Hold on a minute, let's, please, so we can, okay, thank you. Can somebody write that number down for George?
It's on the screen.
Oh, okay,
Okay,
okay.
all right, but I contacted them, and they told me that they'd get back in touch with me, but they didn't say when or, you know, so I was just curious that if they would cover that, because I don't feel that as a result it was my fault, you know.
Yeah, I understand. We're going to
Okay.
review all claims that have been
Okay, that's my only question. Time to leave. All right, thank you.
Hey, George, make sure if you do not have this number, we'll make sure you have that before you leave, okay?
Yes, I do have it.
Okay, all right, thank you. Who? Gina? Gina, can you bring your card back up here, please? Here, I told you you could keep it, and they want to,
So, the reason we'd like them back is because I have to do minutes for this, and I want to make sure I spell things correctly.
yeah,
So,
and we can get those to everybody.
we want to get your name spelled correctly.
Okay. Next, we have is a Whitewater resident, Kelly Balsley. Kelly, do you need this card? Okay. Okay. Down to Jim. Let's make sure they're asking that question.
So I think this question's already been answered, but I'm not sure. What inhibitor that was used to stabilize the styling?
Yeah, I answered that. That's a better question for any of us.
Yeah, we was hoping
Yeah.
to get it answered. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's okay, that's all right. Next one is a Village of Cleves resident, I'm sorry, Gary, is it Walters? D. Walters, maybe? Yeah, that's you, come on up. Sorry, Gary.
Okay.
You don't need, okay.
Yeah, so thank everybody for the response that they did on that day. I'm sure it was very, very traumatic. My question is, and I think this is geared more toward the railroad, they said that the car was there for how many days? 7 to 8 days?
Yeah, it was a little over a week before the incident took place. That's correct.
Okay, so it was inspected when it stopped, correct? Or in motion, as you said, correct?
When it was pulled from the origin for the Central Railroad of Indiana, it was inspected.
Okay, and then when it left for Enios, it was inspected then as well?
Correct.
Okay. So why was it there for 7 to 8 days, and why wasn't it gone to its final destination?
So the 7 to 8 day period, just a little over a week prior, that was at the request of Enios.
Okay.
They didn't have the capacity for the car.
Okay. So my original question is, I apologize for adding more questions, is the fact have any responsibility to contact the municipalities or the townships or the cities that this passes through?
No.
So,
By common carrier, we're a common carrier.
I mean, if you're moving hazardous waste, would it not behoove you as
That's not
prepared?
a decision. That's a federal requirement. That's not up to the railroad.
I would think that if municipality that explosion, if this thing is mishandled or it erupts, I mean, how was Whitewater Township best prepared for this incident if they'd have known that that was going to happen?
Township resident? Want your card? Okay.
Like everybody, this was, he is not going to get exposed to this. So I want to know who will wash our camper. I know it sounds silly compared to all these people's problems, but when we don't even really, I mean, parts per million, I don't know none of that stuff. All I know is some kind of chemicals, right?
Anybody want to answer?
All over my car.
Okay, does anybody want to answer?
I know that Glenn's probably one of the oldest. Our motorhome is at gravel.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
So mine is more for the future and more for the railroad and maybe our township.
Rob, speak into that mic so we can hear, sorry.
Mine is more for the and for the railroad. What can we do to prevent the toxic tanks to be
You're required by common carrier law to move all goods and products for every hazardous material. It's not because we've asked to, we're required by the law to.
but it's not part for, I mean, it was this up the road and they're prepared for this kind of thing. They're prepared for. Why is it outside of our community? You know, you're paid to transport this good. I understand that. It should have never been parked there that long without somebody knowing, left there.
Because they did not have the capacity for that car, along with others. They did not have the capacity.
Okay, so
You will no longer park cars on our railroad. When they arrive, they will come to your facility.
thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, phone, I'm just, Peggy will get on me if I don't talk into the microphone, so. Peggy's our township administrator. So next we got Whitewater Township resident, Bailey Bartley. Bailey? Okay, you want to keep it like mom tells you to? I'll just keep it.
Yeah, you can keep it.
Okay.
So my question is more for the railroad and NEOs. Has derailed twice over the past few years on Kilby and 50. How can you ensure to the residents surrounding us that you will operate safely in our community?
Thank you. So, I mean, that's a fair question. How do we operate safely? That's our goal every day. Every day we wake up, that's our goal. A couple of things I want to say to that. It was a car, it's not a train. There was no derailment. There was no train.
No, in the past it has derailed twice, yeah.
I want to make it clear to everyone, no train accident. There was nothing happened in our operation that caused the reaction of that car. Okay. That's our goal every day, is to ensure we keep cars on the rail. There's been incidents, derailments. I mean, there's various reasons for it. That's something we work really hard to prevent day in and day out. We try to be good partners. We try to do things like this to communicate and be transparent with you what we're working on. Right now, there's projects going on railroads all across of our network that improve the infrastructure. We invest a lot of money to improve the infrastructure to prevent that.
Okay, so can you ensure that people of this community, this or something worse than this will not happen again? Can you say?
I promise you that that doesn't happen again. We're going to do everything we can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bailey. Just real quick, I just want to piggyback off of, and I do not know this gentleman. What's your name? Brian. Okay, thanks. I will tell you, NEOs, and it was an invite, but it was pretty much a demand to be here. I'm just going to credit. I don't know this gentleman. At least he showed. The other half did not, and I do appreciate that. And okay, I'm gonna move on. Next we have Village of Cleves, Cole.
Allergic.
Okay.
Hey, guys. I like to sit on my front porch. The day that it happened, I actually ended up in the hospital too. Had no idea what was going on with me. Zach went to the hospital. Anyway, I've got small grandchildren, and I'm not comfortable with them sitting on the patio furniture, the cushion.
So generally, it's best to clean with soap and water if you're concerned. So, if you can launder the
Residential area.
So there are environmental tests that you can do. As I mentioned, it is common in the environment, so it's a little hard to understand the source of the styrene.
Right.
It can be from things that are already in the house. The best bet is to clean if you're concerned, quite frankly.
Well, what I mean is when it first happened, and we were all told, first we were told to leave the air conditioners on because nobody knew. Then we were told to go ahead and shut everything up. So how do we know?
HVAC filter in the business, it's sure that it had additional exposure,
Right.
but it is one of those things that you can do to help bring some comfort. Whether or not it makes a huge difference, it's, if your furnace filter is getting close, I'd probably recommend you change it.
Right.
As far as what styrene gas remains in the house, it off-gases so quickly. I guarantee if we brought a sampling device into anyone's home, any styrene that we find is going to be a result of couches, carpet, those types of things off-gassing at low levels, like ambient levels.
Is my time up? I have one more question. With the evaporation that you soluble, did like somewhere, and I don't know if it was correct, that it would be on top of the river, like.
I'm actually not sure of that, but typically, like an oil.
So
is
how,
on top.
like removing that, because we've got Miami and we've got the Ohio right there. How would we be able to check on that?
So I know there were crews that look, is there anything required?
Just because we have, in the schools, they like to fish and play and just anything happen to our children,
Absolutely.
so. All right,
All right, hey, okay. Next, we have, you had a couple more seconds, actually. You're good. Next, we have Village of Cleves resident Jack Morgan. Hey, Jack, do you need your card?
No, sir.
Okay,
Thank you for.
absolutely.
I'm just wondering, who made the decision to send the children walking from the school while the train was leaking the chemical into the air? Because there's a video and it shows where the train car was, and when it was leaking, it was going right towards the school. Who made the decision not to lock the school down, and do they stand by that decision?
Do we have anybody here? Oh. Can you? Yes.
I'm Mark, superintendent of the schools. We had a who works for the township in our building of the leak, then informed us of the fact. So we went into lockdown, which is our procedure. We went into shelter in place, which is our procedure. And then we were told to evacuate, which means go home as quickly as possible. We were told that the wind was pushing the vapor away from the school. It was the best time to evacuate. So we followed that directive.
Thank you.
Yeah. Come on. Okay, hold on. Okay, next we have a business owner, Todd, I'm never going to get this, I can't read it. Is Todd here? Come on up, Todd. You don't need your card, I'm taking it? Okay, thanks.
So as a business owner, we were not able to get to our facility on Thursday. So our employees and as a business, how do we recoup funds and wages for our employees?
So that 800 number that we put up before is for residents. I'm going to
Okay.
give you a number that's specific for businesses.
Okay.
203.
Write it on there for me, 203.
202.
202.
8920.
8920.
203, 202, 8920.
Perfect. All right, appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Next, we have actually a Miami resident and a business owner, Richard Steinert. I don't know if I said that. Okay, thanks, Richard. Okay. Next, we have a Village of Cleves resident, Mary Reed. Mary, do you need your card?
You answered the questions mostly. I'll go ahead.
Here, if you wanted to, just make sure we get that back when you're done, okay?
You did answer most of that. Regarding the tankers.
Wait till you're at the mic for me, please.
Regarding the tankers being allowed to be parked in that area, and if they would continue to be parked in that area in the future, was my concern. I've noticed them parked there for a very long time, and I've wondered in the past what they actually contained, and was concerned about that. And I know that tanker was like a pressure cooker when it went off, and it had the other ones also, had the same scenario. It would have been much worse. There were several tankers. Were they all containing the same ingredient, chemical?
The other cars that you saw, one that was venting, the tank cars did contain styrene.
Yes.
When John Keffer and I arrived at the scene tonight, we went out and moved all cars. So if anything, only car would react, and none of the other cars would have.
But they did all contain the same thing?
The tank cars.
Yes. So the heat from the, I'm assuming the temperatures were so hot for quite a while they sat there. They built up temperature inside to pressurize the cabin, and the chemicals blew that valve. And if the valve hadn't blown, it could have blown up. And the other tankers probably might have also been affected. Couldn't that have been the case?
I didn't understand your question. What was
If
your
that
question?
tanker's valve had not blown, that tanker could have blown up. The valve kept it, allowed it to depressurize,
Yeah, so.
like a pressure cooker.
Right, well, the temperature was rising, as he mentioned earlier, the temperature was rising inside the car, which caused the pressure to go up. When that pressure rises, that PRD, that pressure relief device.
To do.
And if that wasn't working properly,
Right.
could there have been a more severe reaction?
Yes.
Yes. Would the car have exploded? The experts told us, and this is including chemists, that told and the contents inside it would be more like a gel, so the car would crack and kind of like a big bathtub.
Any other chemicals that could be hazardous?
They're not allowed to park cars on our road with cars.
Okay. Thank you for answering my questions, and thank you for all of your quick response and attention to what happened. We do appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, we have a Miami resident, David. David, do you need your card? You have a lot on here.
No, those questions have been answered, but I've come up with a couple. One of them is the pressure relief valve, PRV. Is there a yearly procedure for that valve to be tested, for one? Number two is on the testing, when they did the sampling, how many sampling devices were used to monitor the leak? The map that you had up there, I couldn't tell if it was showing multiple, or was it just three, or was there several locations that were on those?
I think, so Greater Cincinnati Hazmat deployed 4 monitors, and those would have been the ones on the west side of the river in the Hooven area. City of Cincinnati Hazmat, Rescue 14, I believe they deployed 4 or 5 monitors once they arrived, and they would have been on the east side, over on the Cleve side of the ridge. And then the other contractors that came in, I cannot say how many monitors they deployed, but they did stationary sampling, and they also did roving sampling.
So the report that I'll upload from GC Hazmat, the Great Cincinnati Hazmat, their lat long is in here, where they put their monitors.
Okay.
And then you'd have to look at, we put the other report online with the maps and everything else, and that, if they put the lat longs, it'll be in that report that we uploaded, that you can download from our website.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
The third party that we brought, the third party that we hired to come do air sampling, the results from that, isn't that what you shared on the website?
Yeah, we have that, and we have the EPA stuff.
Those were the results. Those were all the air monitoring that we asked to do, and we actually asked them to stay around till a day after the car was there, just to take an abundance of caution.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick on your third question, you asked about kind of continuous sampling. So all businesses that pollute have an air permit, and as part of that air permit, they are regulated and monitored how much pollution out there in compliance. That air permit is traditionally issued by Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, and here locally that's done through the Department of Environmental Services, which is a Hamilton County agency. So they do have a permit through them, and they do get sampled, but specifics to that question would have to go to them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Next, we have a Whitewater resident, Sandy Steinlen. Stylin? Stalin? Oh, okay. Sandy, do you need your card? Okay.
So the question to the answer to all the questions seems to be Ineos, which has decided not to be here tonight. The railroad did their job, excellent. The valve did its job. The tankers could have easily become another East Palestine. When is the class lawsuits going to be filed for criminal negligence on Ineos' part? That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sandy. Next, we have when
When will the lawsuit be filed?
oh, I don't, yeah, I do not know when the lawsuits will be filed. Yeah, I don't know. So next we have, Miami resident, Village of Cleves resident, and a business owner, Nancy Pessler. This, can we get that back when you're done reading?
My is really not a question, it's a statement. Growing up in Sailor Park, grew up next to Monsanto. We grew up on Fernbank. We played in the park. As you all know, in this area, if you're new to the area, the Addison School had a monitor put on top of the school, and it was shut down. Therefore, there is the Three Rivers campus down in Cleves right now. As a result of that, in my immediate family, my brother died at age 55 from a rare lung disease. He was a patient at the clinic. My aunt died of glioblastoma before glioblastoma was a thing. She lived on Hillside Avenue, downwind from Monsanto. And 2 other residents on Fernbank Avenue, a 3-block community, 70 from lung cancer, and another one is my brother. That these are not related. So my reason for being here tonight is because we have owned businesses in Sailor Park. We were beer distributors, knew the first and last beer distributor of Hoople Shanling, as well as the BP down on River Road, as well as the drive-thrus on River Road and Sailor and Cleves. So we had to evacuate. My mother, who's 84, said, I'm coming to Europe. I'm evacuating, I'm leaving. You have to get the dog, I can't take the dog. I went back to get the dog, and I knew what it smelled like. I grew up with it, and I smelled it. And we are technically Miami Township residents, but My question, comment is, it's really not a question, is you can regulate and have people, if they're sex offenders, the community is notified, but there's no notification of a styrene cancer-causing agent sitting, and I mean sitting days, not only days, but weeks, because my brother, he had a camp down at North Bend Camp, down there at the boat club. We would sit there and watch, and they would monitor, they would like say, how long is that carbon sitting there? People reside in North Bend Boat Club for the summer. The cars don't move. I'm glad to hear that you, Indiana Rail, did what you did, and you're telling INEOS, but Monsanto, INEOS is one and the same. They're making plastics for Procter & Gamble. Not many people want to go up against Procter & Gamble. Well, guess what? I'm Aaron Brockovich, only I'm Nancy Pessler. And if there's regulations for sex offenders, there should be regulations for cancer-causing agents.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Village of Cleves resident Amy Detmer. Amy, do you need your card?
This is just for the railroad. Just am curious who owned the actual line. Sorry, who owned the actual line that the tanker was sitting on? And was it a lease agreement to store it there?
Central Railroad of Indiana owns that railroad, and there was no lease agreement for that car to be staged on that railroad.
And you do realize that's illegal, flammable.
Amy,
liquid.
speak into the mic so we can all hear.
By DOT rules, that is illegal for you to store that without a written agreement. Do you realize that?
Is that your question?
No, I'm saying, do you realize that? That you
I
can.
don't think it's illegal. It's not uncommon.
For type 3 flammable liquid, you have to have a written agreement stored on your line unless it's a private line. And the tariff? Okay, I will look into that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Amy. Here, you can send that down. Next, we have a Whitewater resident, Patricia Cohn. Okay, all right, thank you.
Some of the ones in purple, Doug didn't want to.
It's raining outside and there's a black escape, your windows are down.
Oh, jeez.
Doug.
Did everybody hear that? There's a black escape with their windows down and
The ones, I think, Mark, there are people who didn't want to come up but wanted their questions.
put that down. Yeah. You want me to just ask it?
Yeah.
Okay, let me on that. Okay, so this one here is, I guess, I'm close to the podium.
That's me, I can actually come up.
Oh, you want to come up? Thank you.
No.
Okay.
Thank you. So my question is, I work from home, but I don't have my own, I'm not my own business, so will all for lost wages? I just wasn't able to use FTO, so I have lost wages, but I'm not my own business. I do work for someone else. Okay. My other question is, well, it was my understanding that the leak was seen from someone driving by, and we have all the factories and everything. Being newer to the area, it's not uncommon to see billowing smoke and not know where it's coming. If the leak actually longer than when we were notified around 12:45 or 1 o'clock, if that's a possibility, because maybe it was billowing out and everything. Oh, okay. Do you know roughly time they had gone by?
I don't know what that time frame was, but the first crew started 6 a.m. and roughly about, and there would not have been anything.
Okay, but no. Okay, thank you.
Robin, you want to come back up? You need your card?
So this is for the health. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, if styrene gas evaporates in the air, we are safe. Why are we having actions to our bodies? Why are we having metal tasting and burning eyes and headaches and numb tongues, vomiting, taste, and it's been a week?
So days after exposure to styrene, there's really not great medical tests for doing it. Exposed, and within that first 24-hour period, there is some blood testing that can to determine if you are experiencing symptoms, regardless of what they are and how severe you think they are. If they're symptoms that you didn't have prior, I would strongly recommend you talk to your physician and go to care or an FQHC. Sometimes these cause new symptoms. Exposure can cause illness, but also sometimes incident. I'm not saying that's your case, but you should always see your physician if you have symptoms that are concerning.
Okay. One, though, what you're telling earlier, you said the air is safe, but now you're telling us we could have health symptoms from styrene gas.
So it is safe to move back home. The evacuation order has been lifted. The air sampling that has happened afterwards is showing that typically off gases evaporates. I am uncertain of what happened. Hours we heard several questions. I do not know what level of styrene gas you were exposed to then.
Okay.
And if you have symptoms related to that, you should seek medical attention.
When we were back home the next day and got to go home 15 minutes, I had symptoms. I went to the doctor today and he said, "Oh, there's not really much we can tell you. We don't know. In 10 years, there's not really a lot of data or research to tell you." We were giving a COVID test just to rule that out, and it was ruled out.
I would recommend in any of these instances where you are continuously, weeks from now still having symptoms, continue to go to the physician and so that they build that record and continue to understand what underlying conditions may contribute.
But I feel like your information of telling us it's safe is misleading.
I still stand by the data, but NIOSH and CDC say are allowable limits for exposure, and I am without a doubt looking at all on this map. And Mr. Crosley to the threshold of allowable limits. That said, each person can react differently. I have family members who can't eat bread because of celiac disease. Everyone reacts differently to chemical exposure. Some people may be more prone to having an adverse reaction, but generally it is allowable to work in an environment with the sample results that are coming back, as well as living in that environment.
Okay, so the people that were there sampling, do we know if any of them had any physical reactions?
I cannot speak to that.
I'll speak to that. I was there, I smelled it, I was home, I was on the phone with my wife, it was very strong. My wife was not home, and maybe it's just me, I had no reactions whatsoever, but when my wife came home, after the fact, I have symptoms. She called her primary go to lab special tube they had to put the blood in, and it could take anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks to get the results. So she followed the protocol. I can tell you, I was home. I was not at work that day because I had foot surgery, and I smelled it. I was on the phone with her at 12:45, and I was already smelling it.
Okay, I have another question. It's not written down, but was the Red Cross invited to come and help with the evacuation process? Because we had senior citizens sleeping in cars. I feel like that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I do not know anything about Red Cross
I
or...
apologize. What was I've got too
Was
much.
the Red Cross called and invited in to help with the evacuation process? Because we had senior citizens sleeping in cars. I feel like that's ridiculous.
So we worked with Whitewater in Miami to establish the shelter area and then to let us know what other resources were needed. And then we, as widespread as we could spread the information, we told everybody how to come here and get the information. So Miami Township, I can't remember how long they were open. Eventually, we moved everybody over here. Nobody sought shelter at either one of the locations. We had them on standby to, if we had to put out cots or anything like that, to open a shelter. But then the railroad offered to pay for hotels.
Right, and we appreciate it.
So yes, we were communicating with them.
But my understanding at the beginning, there wasn't really good communications. Might be something we work on in the future if we're going to stay in an unzoned area.
I could, sure. If I can just recommend, the county has a notification system geared around your address. If you go to alerthc.org, so we have both Smart 911, and you can read about it. It's a great system, or I'm happy to talk to anybody here. And then Alert Hamilton County, and once you sign up, so in that zone, if you'd have been registered, and we've been advertising this for years, it's just, it's tough with how many people we have. We notify those people with our system. We can text, email, and we can make a phone call in situations like this, which we did use that system. Now, the only numbers we can get are landlines, which I know most people don't have landlines anymore. So we encourage you to go to alerthc.org. So you can put your work and our home in there. If they're both in Hamilton County, I have both of mine in there. And then the great thing about the great thing about Smart 911 and Alert Hamilton County, it's a system called RAVE, is you can also, if you have, you can put in any kind of special needs in the home. So, for example, my stepson is grown, or at least physically he's grown, so he's not in the home. And so I have a puppy, and so the picture of my dog is in my profile, so the firefighters can know when you call 911 from my house that they need to get my dog out if I'm not there. So it's a great system. I encourage you to go take a look at it. And if this happens again, we use wireless emergency alerts, which pop up on your cell phone. And we use for dire emergencies like the shelter in place and the evac, and then when we cancel the evacuation. And then we use generally use the Alert Hamilton County Reverse 911, and then we work with our communities to help us get the information out as well through any means that they have. So the systems are available. It's been available for a while. We've been working hard to advertise it. I don't have an advertising budget, but if you go to that site, Smart 911, Alert Hamilton County. Both fabulous systems.
Okay, thank
So
you.
if I can just address one thing, this seems to be a story that's told over and over again. Peggy Westerfeld, our administrator, didn't get a seat up here because we're pretty thin staff here, and she is the person who runs our video for the meetings. So I'm gonna share this story with you about the couple that stayed in the truck. They were here. They were offered hotel accommodations by the railroad. Peggy talked with them, asked them to go someplace. They chose not to leave. They chose to stay in their truck. It was their choice. The railroad folks that were here offered accommodations to them. I think I know that there was no one here that didn't get an accommodation. Some couple, I don't know their names, 10:30 at night with 3 dogs. Came in, I called our contact for the railroad. They found them a hotel that was pet friendly. I don't know if we had anybody after that, but that couple was offered hotel accommodations. They chose to stay here in their truck, which is their choice, and we were glad to have them. We kept this facility open all night. But just to dispel that rumor, it was their choice to do that. It wasn't because no one helped them.
Okay, next we have business owner Carrie Davis. Okay.
Hey, I'm with Greater Community Groups. We've operated a nonprofit in Hamilton County for
a little over 20 years, and there's just so much that needs to be addressed, and you're going to cut me off way too soon. First thing I'd like to say is, if you are experiencing any medical issues, you have business losses, losses of income, I highly recommend, I don't know why none of these people have told you this, that you consult with an attorney. When you call the 800 line, they are recording you. And that recording can be used against you to prevent you from collecting funds that may or may not be due to you. So, first off, the legal issues. The regulatory, I do have a question. Does the relief valve work the same way my tea kettle does? That when it's sitting on the stove, as it gets a little hotter, it starts shh, and then it goes on and blows real hard. Is that how these valves work? Similar to that?
I'm not the right person to answer how that.
Okay, that's all right. I don't want you to waste too much of my time if you don't know the answer. I was told that's how they work. And I was also told, actually, I saw it on video in the news, that for 3 days prior to it being visually seen, that people were calling in complaints about the smell, and that they were saying something ain't right. I thought I heard in the reports that the fire department went over repeatedly and checked it. And so, and it turns out there was a major problem. I don't know if that's true. I know it's on video, but I'm very concerned that people were complaining and an adequate response did not happen by anybody. Another issue I wanted to bring up, by the way, on the issue of the smell, the greater community groups launched today in cooperation with Carnegie Mellon College in Pennsylvania, Seventh Generation, and the Heinz Foundation. We launched today, we weren't planning on doing it for a few weeks, a site called Smell My Neighborhood. And on the site, it's an app, it's free, you download it, and if you smell something, say something. If something is offensive, it is most likely hazardous to your health. And this free app will allow you to see if other people are seeing this and experiencing the same thing. Today, in the newspaper, they said, a report just came out about East Palestine, how the air monitoring equipment used by us and by the EPA did not detect, they're not made to detect. Back in, tested it, they found that these houses do have chemicals in them this many years later. And so I wish we had more time to talk about the regulations, because I understand what's going on. They make money by letting them store it. It is not illegal for them to store them there, but they don't call it storage. They call it, quote, in transport. So as long as it has not reached its final destination, then the regulation level is way down here. Once it meets the company's front doors, the regulations go up to here, and you're safer. And so it on the railroads, which they all do, they're getting away with not monitoring their equipment and their products. But there's so much I wish I could share, but go to the Smell My Neighborhood, and when you smell stuff, and let's see what's going on and track what's happening.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Yes.
If I could answer one of her questions, that was the only call that we received in that area for any kind of anything.
Yep.
There was nothing to the days prior that was dispatched to us.
Okay, all right, thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Next, we have, these cards are not marked. So we have a Stacy Carney. And Stacy, can you tell us where you reside, because your card was not marked, so I do not know. Do you need your card?
I'm in Miami Township, right above Ineos. Did you say there's an Ineos rep here?
If they came in, it had to be late. They, as far as I know, they are not
Somebody
here.
said he came in late. Maybe one of the first responders can answer.
Okay.
Aeneas sends out like a blast of a horn. It's 3, and it goes on for like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and I can only think that it's something has leaked, but there's never any notification to the residents. Wondering what that tone means. I mean, we're up in the Triple Crown subdivision, and so we hear it 5 or 6 times a year, and I would like to know what to do. Are we supposed to close our windows, go into our houses?
We can, Jim, will you get that question? Glad.
We have a local contact with Ineos. They're part of a group of businesses during the summer called CAP. I will ask them what that is, and we will get that on the Miami Township and the Whitewater Township websites.
Pretty much what your card reads way. Yeah, no, good question.
Is your phone number on the card?
No, I'll put it on to give a pen.
Your email or phone number?
We can mark
I will call you with
that.
the answer.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call the next one. Is that okay? Okay. Next we have, and this card is, well.
Don't need my card.
Okay.
You answered my question.
Okay.
Just tomorrow.
Hold on, wait till you're to Mike so we can.
Okay.
There will be data about the air quality, parts per billion, about that afternoon, correct, of the incident here? Okay, that's all, and so I'm glad someone mentioned it had an odor, because it did, because when you read online, it says it's odorless. It is not. I could smell it very strongly.
Yeah.
So, yep. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have another one that's not marked, no address, Dave Clendenin, or I'm not sure. Dave? Okay, Dave, we must have answered his question from what he's got on here. We answered that actually times. That questions. Do you know, I was going to make you fill out that. I know, Kelly, so go ahead.
Ain't that hard. So do we know what the inhibitor was put into the styrene? What is the protocol of putting what is the inhibitor that's a protocol put into the styrene train?
As it would pertain to the inhibitors, that would be something that would be directed to Ineos to answer.
So, to a styrene cart.
Yeah, I'm not
So
sure.
I got one more question
That would
then. How do we know that that wasn't harmful to our health? Because y'all say it was odorless.
So the MSDS sheet for styrene is what we went off.
So I'm not talking about the styrene, I'm talking about the inhibitor. They add it to the styrene to haul it here.
I personally do not know.
Would be a, right? Is that what, can we get your card?
Right, it's all messed up, I'll write it again. So, but that's saying you don't smell, well, how do we know that that inhibitor in that styrene? And that's what we're smelling.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the process.
That it was 4th? September 13th.
You put that question on that card.
Odor that we all smell.
And Jim, that's another one we can probably send along.
Odor that we all smell.
And Jim, that's another one we can probably send along to.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll send that along with
Yep.
our other questions along to Ineos.
Ineos.
But,
Well, that's all we can do, right? And they're being sent, and they are getting them. I was confirmed they are getting everything.
yeah.
Why is it your wife knew that there was...
Can you go to the microphone, please?
I started shaking when you said this, but I want to know why your wife knew there was a blood test she could go take that would document her exposure, and it was never advertised to the general public.
So it was her primary doctor that said that.
Well, but once you knew she was getting a blood test, don't you feel it was incumbent upon you to let all these residents know, hey, go get your blood test, because that is how you're going to prove your exposure that might be causing this, that, and the other thing. So I have a problem with that. I have a problem with the fact that when this started, they didn't even know what styrene was. So my job as an advocate is to be mean, right? To call things out. And I want you to know, just like with this app we introduced it, our goal is to find solutions and make things better. I thank our heroes, not even knowing what it was. You were running toward the danger to protect your residents. And I admire that. But we also know that Hamilton County has a wealth of professionals who their knowledge exceeds probably everybody else's in this room. The Cincinnati Fire Department, and I think there's somebody here from Hazmat. They should have been, not only should they have been advising you, but you should have been taking their advice, okay? And you should have shared that information. With the federal regulations, so that you are required under law. A company asked you to store it. You did not, and the young lady was a little bit incorrect. You weren't storing it because legally under the statute, it's still its final destination. What is the reason for why the company was not accepted? Are they overloaded? You know, that kind of thing.
So when we say that they had no capacity to receive the visit, they could not fit it into their facility.
So how are you, even if you are the very best in the whole world, how are you going to stop if you are mandated under law to transport? How are you going to stop the cars from continuing to come down the railroad because they're leaving where they're produced and they're heading there, and this is the stop? And then the other question I have for the fire department and EMS is, where the heck are the 14 trail cars now? Who's in danger? Who's watching them? Did they have, if they couldn't accept it because they didn't have storage, where are these cars? Are they just closer to their destination, or are they in the secure facility, which has the regulations up here about monitoring?
Those cars were placed into the facility, all 14, along with the car that was reacting. What we had done that day was to remove plastic cars from their facility and instructed them that they were going to receive every styrene car that we had on the railroad.
And I just don't understand, if they had the ability to do that, why were they sitting on the railroad at all? And let me say one other thing. The gentleman talked about the stopping and the inspections and stuff like that. I believe the federal regulations require that when the product gets on your rail lines, the distributor of the product is supposed to send every fire department along its path a sheet that tells you everything that is coming your way if it meets a certain criteria, which styrene does. So they're supposed to be letting every jurisdiction along the path know what's coming down the line, so you are prepared for it. Maybe the law's changed since I read it.
Ma'am, that's incorrect.
Thank you. I love being corrected. So they don't, I love it. I love it. I'd rather you correct me publicly and embarrass me than anybody get bad information. Have to distribute.
No, they do not. So the car is marked with a code.
Right,
We look
I'm
up that
familiar.
code if we need to. And then basically, we work with all of our transporters, including this railroad, to basically, from a perspective, we track, we don't track, We're aware of the types of chemicals that generally come through. We don't know when they come through. And then, based on that information, we work with our fire departments to train so that they can respond to an incident after it happens. So we do the consequence management.
I think a great way to, solve problems, which is what I routine where maybe they too go take an inventory about what's sitting on the rail line so that and the MSD placard is on the side of the truck. It will tell you what chemicals in it. If next week, then I
Appreciate it.
14 cars could always
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to know why they didn't know the water was being contained.
Okay, can you fill out
Into the water, or going into
can you fill out a card, because we'll have to have you at the mic, nobody will hear your, Kelly, do you have another question, or is this the one? Okay, you want it? I think we're getting enough questions, if we can give them a second.
Are you guys just going to update the information on the website as far as the stabilizer goes?
No, we'd have, if Ineos sends it to me, or if you guys get it and send it to me, I'm happy to put it on there. I'm happy to put it on there. They give it to me, and I'll put it on our website.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll forward it on to Nick, and just third Monday of the month, you could come to those too, and we'll follow up. But anything, myself, Jim Brett, or whatever, from either township, whatever we find out, we'll pass on so we can get it on that website, and then we'll make sure we get it out so everybody knows where it is. I do think the big thing is right now is where Ineos is going with this.
I don't want to speak for the village in a very good way.
We'll get that out and let everybody know. And yeah. So, are there any other?
Real quick, my name's Ted Babel. I'm from the Village of Cleveland. I'd like to thank every one of you for being out here and being very transparent about everything that's been going on. I'd like to thank the news because they have kept us informed of what's going on. And I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that anybody here kept anything from the public. And I
can't read the name, but.
Okay, okay, Tracy, come on up. I'm sorry. That's okay.
Hello. I've had some real problems throughout this whole thing. For one thing, I live on the Whitewater River, right across from Jameson Creek. And I believe that cloud just kind of came on down because it was really blowing hard that day. And I believe I was exposed to it, my son, my grandson, my fiance. But when we went back into the house, it was even worse. We weren't given another day to stay away so I could be able to clean. It was terrible. My son got so sick, he was ejecting vomit. And we all had chest pains. I had pains in my back. I couldn't breathe. My kitten totally disappeared. But I want to know why they did not contain that water when it was coming off of that tanker. When they were spraying that tanker, why weren't they containing the water, keeping it from going into the main water supply?
When they were spraying the tanker, the Ohio EPA and the US EPA, I believe, Chief, they both took samples and were monitoring the water runoff from the tanker, and there was no styrene in their samples that I saw.
So
How could that be?
Also, we were not spraying the chemical. We were spraying the ends of the tank cars. We were not spraying directly over the PRD. So the styrene is lighter than air. It vaporizes, it rises. Our water streams were aimed and hitting the ends of the rail car, and we were not spraying water directly over the pressure relief device.
And if I can, one other thing, the Cleese Waterworks supplies the water to the area that, in Hooven.
I have
The
a
Cleese-
well. I have
All
a
right.
private well.
All right, so, and you're up by Jameson on Lawrenceburg Road, is that?
Yes.
Okay, so for folks who are worried about that, there's been some questions about that. Cleese Waterworks is a closed system. They did test their water. The folks from Cleese Waterworks did a great job of keeping us in water so that we could keep that tanker cool. And they have tested their water, so it's
I just,
well
in
taken care
case
of. And
this
Craig-
happens ever
Craig might be
again,
able to answer the water.
I would like for next time, for people to be more aware of where that's going and what's happening. Because I don't think they were prepared for this.
All right.
I don't think they even knew.
All right, I just want to add a comment
What to
about the assessment of where that water was going. The Ohio EPA, the US EPA, and the contractors that were there specifically did an assessment of where the water from the fire hoses was going, and it was absorbing into the track ballast in the ground directly underneath. There was no water that ran to the river. And on top of that, just remember that styrene is insoluble in water, so that water, even as it ran and soaked into the ground, I should say, was not absorbing the styrene within it. It was only styrene vapor that was released, not liquid.
Well,
right.
it really bothered me that when I was watching the news 2 days later, he did not know. And that's what my complaint was. They were
All
not
right.
prepared.
All right, thank you. We have one left, Joe Salvato, looks like you're out of Colerain Township.
Thank you for all you've been doing. I just have one question. Are there any efforts to place local citizens on oversight public safety committees, if in fact there are any such local public safety committees? I feel like all you are here, and you represent government, et cetera, but I feel like there should be citizens on various committees, on oversight committees.
So there are a variety of ways for citizens to get involved in those kinds of things that you're talking about. So first of all, there is an organization, and this isn't specific to INEOS, I'll get to them next, but to start with, the group has already been mentioned, called the Brower Road Community Advisory Panel, and that is a coalition of industries on Brower Road that meets generally monthly, and they invite citizens from the communities, primarily Miami Township in that case, that want to come and learn more about the facilities and their safety programs. INEOS, up until I think it was right around the COVID era, used to have a quarterly meeting of a community advisory panel as well. And I think after the pandemic, they had stopped the meeting, and I'm not sure that that group is meeting anymore because I don't get invitations to any of their meetings, but I used to participate in that. So those are two ways that you can get involved with some of the local industries that handle chemicals in this area. And the other way you can get involved is my day-to-day job is coordinating the activities of our local emergency planning committee, or LEPC as we usually call ourselves. And our job is hazardous materials awareness and planning for Hamilton County. We meet quarterly, and then we have periodic communications in between our meetings, but it's open to the public. We welcome any citizens that would want to attend as either guests, or if you want to become a member and officially join our group, you are more than welcome. And if you want to see me after the meeting, I can definitely get those emails out to you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Joe. Kelly, you want to go ahead and, did you?
Sorry, guys, but I got one thing for the railroad. For us, Hooven community, can you please put in air monitors so you know this won't happen again? You would have known it was leaking off beforehand. We all know that. We want air monitors up around the railroad company so we know if something like this happens again before it ignites. Can we please try to do that? Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to closing comments. We will start with Miami Township President Blanton, if you have any closing comments you'd like.
I don't have any. Mr. Volrath, Mr. Roberson?
If I may, I would just like to thank Whitewater Township for the invite. And obviously, this was an accident nobody asked for. I feel for everyone that was affected and impacted. But the silver lining for us is that this was a great collaboration and partnership of all the agencies and the townships here. And I think that the demonstration of our fire department, Whitewater's fire department, 10 additional fire departments, so 12 in total, working with EMA, public health, LEPC. So just know that everybody up here cares and as was stated by some of the residents here, try to do everything we can to help the situation. So thank you for including us in this tonight.
You want to, any Whitewater Township want to make a closing statement?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment. I spent about 2 days at Command Central watching everything that was going on, and I was very impressed with the camaraderie, the mutual aid, all the different departments, how well everybody worked together, all the training obviously pays off, and it was just very impressive. The police, the railroad, the fire departments, Red Cross, just everybody came in, local citizens, everybody worked together, and it was very impressive. And even all of you, how well you've joined together and sat here tonight and asked questions, listened to answers. I just want to thank everybody. That it's really impressive how people can pull together. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
If that's all you got, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second Whitewater.
Voice vote, please. Or, go ahead.
Mr. Pope?
Yay.
Mr. Shively?
Aye.
And Mr. King?
Yay.
All right, motion to adjourn from Miami Township.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Yes.
Yes.